New details have just emerged around Prince Louis, the youngest child of the Prince and Princess of Wales. Sources familiar with the matter have indicated that test results connected to Louis have produced a huge shock inside Kensington Palace that nobody was expecting. Today, I am going to walk you through what has been revealed and why Catherine is shocked about it. But before we get into what was revealed, you quickly need to understand who Prince Louis actually is inside this family, because the public version and the private version are not the same thing. Louis Arthur Charles, born April 23, 2018, is the third child of William and Catherine, fifth in line to the throne. Young enough to have grown up almost entirely under the shadow of his parents' turbulent years, the Meghan fallout, the King's illness, the Princess of Wales' own health crisis. But here is what most people don't know. Inside Kensington Palace, Louis has always been considered the wild card, not in a negative sense, but in the sense that those closest to the family privately acknowledge he is the most unpredictable of the three Cambridge children. George is being prepared, Charlotte is composed beyond her years, but Louis has always operated on his own frequency. You have seen glimpses of it publicly, the faces at the Jubilee, the unfiltered energy at Trooping the Colour, the moments where he simply refuses to perform for the cameras in the way royal children are quietly expected to. Sources close to the Wales household have told me that Catherine has always been fiercely protective of Louis, specifically because of this quality. She sees in him something raw and real that she does not want the institution to flatten. But the institution has its own expectations, and when results, any kind of results, suggest that a royal child may require a different kind of attention, the institution does not simply stand aside and let a mother handle it. That is where the tension begins, and it runs deeper than anyone has publicly acknowledged. Now here is where this story becomes something more than just a palace drama, because what I have learned about Catherine's reaction tells you everything about the woman behind the title. Catherine has spent years constructing something remarkably deliberate, a public image of calm, of grace, of unshakable composure. She has survived the Meghan years. She has survived the scrutiny of her health battle. She has stood at podiums and walked through crowds and smiled through things that would have broken most people. But this landed differently. Sources with direct knowledge of the situation have described Catherine's initial reaction to these details as one of genuine distress, the kind that happens in private rooms, away from cameras, away from staff whose job it is to report upward. And what makes this particularly significant is the context it sits inside. Catherine is still rebuilding. After her cancer diagnosis, after months away from public duties, after the carefully staged return that the palace managed with surgical precision, she is not operating from a position of full strength. She is a woman who is healing, who is mothering three children, who is simultaneously being asked to carry the future image of the British monarchy on her shoulders. And now this. Sources say William has been supportive, but even William, according to those close to the couple, was not fully prepared for what the details contained. But the strangest thing of all is probably that this is not the first time that sensitive information about a royal child has surfaced at a moment of institutional vulnerability. Think about that. When the monarchy is under pressure, when questions about relevance, about modernization, about the very purpose of the institution are circulating at their loudest, information has a habit of emerging, sometimes to distract. I have spent years documenting how the palace machine operates, and one of the things I know with absolute certainty is this: Kensington Palace does not leak accidentally. But then there is another possibility, one that sources have quietly raised with me in recent weeks, that this information did not come from inside Kensington Palace at all, that it came from somewhere else entirely, from a faction within the broader royal apparatus that has never been entirely comfortable with William and Catherine's increasingly independent operation, an operation that, since the King's illness, has been quietly but unmistakably positioning itself for a future that arrives sooner than anyone wants to publicly acknowledge. If that is true, and I believe it may well be, then Louis is not the story. Louis is the leverage, and that is a far more disturbing possibility than anyone is currently prepared to discuss. And yet, through all of this, the palace has said nothing. Let's be clear about what royal silence actually means. When something is untrue, the palace says so, quietly, through back channels, through carefully placed denials in friendly newspapers, through a spokesperson's non-statement that nonetheless makes the position clear. But when the palace says nothing, when there is no denial, no clarification, no anonymous briefing designed to reframe the narrative, that silence has a meaning of its own. Right now, both Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace have offered absolutely nothing in response to what has emerged. Not a dismissal, not a reassurance, not even the standard "we do not comment on private family matters" that gets deployed when something is true, but too sensitive to confirm. Just silence. Sources close to the situation have indicated that internally there is significant disagreement about how to handle this. There are those who want to get ahead of the story, but then there are those who believe that any response at all only elevates it. That tension between containment and transparency is itself a signal. It tells you that what has emerged is real enough to cause genuine strategic disagreement at the highest levels. And that is not nothing, that is everything. So what exactly are these test results, and why are they being described as shocking? Let's be precise about what we actually know. No official confirmation has come from Kensington Palace, but sources familiar with the situation have pointed towards something that goes beyond routine childhood health screening. The most credible speculation circulating in royal circles centers around developmental assessments. And here is why that matters. Royal children, particularly those in direct line of succession, undergo evaluations that go far beyond what ordinary families experience. Academic assessments, psychological evaluations, behavioral profiling, all of it fed back into an institutional framework that is less concerned with the child's individual well-being than with their future suitability for public life. Now consider what we already know about Louis publicly. His energy is undeniable. His resistance to performing on cue has been visible at virtually every major public appearance. The Jubilee balcony moments, the trooping the colour photographs, the unfiltered reactions that the public found charming, but that those inside the institution watched very differently. Sources suggest the results may point towards something on the neurodevelopmental spectrum, nothing that would define him, nothing that would limit him, but then something that the palace machinery would immediately begin calculating how to manage, contain, and if possible, quietly erase from any official narrative. That calculation, not the results themselves, is what reportedly sent shockwaves through Kensington Palace, and that is what frightened Catherine most. So where does this leave us? And more importantly, where does it leave Louis, Catherine, and a monarchy already navigating more institutional pressure than at any point since the death of Diana? Catherine will do what Catherine has always done. She will compose herself. She will redirect her formidable energy toward protecting her son from the machinery that has already begun turning around this story. But then the machinery does not stop, simply because a mother wants it to. It never has. Not for Diana, not for Meghan. Sources close to the situation suggest that William is already in conversations about how to manage the next phase, not just publicly, but institutionally, because the deeper issue here is not a test result. The deeper issue is whether the royal family has genuinely evolved in how it treats its most vulnerable members, its children, the ones who never chose this life, the ones who were born into an institution that has historically valued image over well-being, perception over truth. Louis is 7 years old. He did not ask to be fifth in line to the throne. He did not ask to be watched, assessed, and discussed by people who have never met him. But here we are, and the question to leave you with today is this. Has the British monarchy truly changed how it protects its children? Or is Louis simply the latest child to discover what this family has always demanded above everything else? Silence. Has the palace handled this correctly, or is Catherine right to be frightened? Should royal children be given absolute privacy, or does public accountability extend to the whole family? Leave your thoughts below.